In Conversation with Terry Shepard, award-winning broadcaster, narrator, and author. A deep dive into the writer's craft with the artists and support systems who create the stories we love.
Thanks, Lisa. Rebecca Faye Smith Galli is an author, columnist, and resilience expert who has turned life's toughest challenges into a prolific writing career that uplifts and inspires. After surviving a series of unimaginable losses, Becky has proven one thing: life can be good no matter what. I love that phrase. Becky Galli, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here, Terry.
Tell me what made you decide to write this book.
Interesting. So this book, Morning Fuel, is the daily reader. And my very first book was a memoir, Rethinking Possible, which addressed my crazy life. You know, I've had a lot of adversity, a lot of challenges, lost my 17-year-old brother, had two special needs children, including epilepsy and autism, was divorced, and then 9 days later, paralyzed by this crazy thing called transverse myelitis. Affects 1 in a million. So I wrote the memoir. And so when I was speaking about it, that was a lot of the questions that came about, how do you do it? How do you keep strong? And I found a habit that I shared in Morning Fuel, which is doing daily readings. Every morning I wake up, I love to watch the sun come up, and I have 5 or 6 books I kind of rotate through and become inspired. I feel like it's, the way you start your day kind of sets the tone for the way you engage in the day. And so I decided to write what I read and collect a lot of the stories that I've written about through really 20 years of writing. So, and polish them up and put them in a little book that people could use to inspire them or at least start their day.
You've had a fascinating career even before all of these events. Take us through your story.
Well, life was pretty good until about age 20. And that's when I lost my 17-year-old brother in a water skiing accident. And our family of 5, which was very close and very much believe what's planned is possible, was my dad's mantra, and my mom's was get your ducks in a row. So we were very orderly, organized, but also created a lot of family time by design. We were close by design, I like to say. So when we lost my brother, it reconfigured our family. That was my first, probably my deepest loss, was lose a 17-year-old sibling. So life in my 20s was pretty good after that. I married the man of my dreams. We had 4 children. And then in my 30s, that's when things went a little south. One of my children developed epilepsy, another one autism. And then our marriage just couldn't survive both of these difficult situations. And February 3rd, my divorce was final. And February 12th, 1997, I was paralyzed. I got this strange flu that became a mycoplasma pneumonia that kicked off this no cause, no cure disease of transverse myelitis that basically destroyed my myelin sheath. I was hopeful, though, because a third of people recover fully, a third recover partially, and a third have no recovery at all. And I thought, by this time in my life, maybe I was due a break. But I was in that last third that didn't get any recovery at all. So I lived my life from a wheelchair, coming on 28 years now, and I've just tried to handle adjustments as they come. As you said, I believe life can be good no matter what. The operative word there is can. You have to work at it. It doesn't come to you good. You have to look for that goodness. So that's one of the reasons I wrote Morning Fuel, to kind of get you fired up to look for the good.
Most people carry around trauma that we don't know about, and just one incident of trauma can turn you into a victim or a victor. What was it that made you decide to be the resilient woman you are?
I was really fortunate that I grew up in a family of positivity. I really didn't know any other way. I got to watch my parents get through the loss of my brother. And, it was one of the most important learnings I learned or discovered as I was writing the memoir is I got a front row seat to watching people adjust to an unimaginable loss. You know, my brother was the president of the student council, leader at church, a musician, an athlete, all those things, big plans. And it was just gone, you know, in an instant like that. And so they grieve differently, though. And that's one of the lessons I think that I learned is, you know, my dad was a minister and can very publicly take his loss and talk about it from the pulpit. And he also became a noted lecturer on grief. My mom was more private and joined support groups for parents that had lost children. And my sister, she wanted to be with my brother. So that was a whole different dynamic where they had to get her counseling to make sure she had a healthy approach to this loss and could move through her loss. In high school, they were 18 months apart. And so his loss was very much not only a part of her life, but a part of her community. And I was in college where I had people that knew my brother, knew Forrest, and knew how close we were, but it wasn't I was in a different environment. So my friends supported me in different ways. It really made me learn that we grieve in different ways, and that's okay as long as we get support in moving through it and don't get stuck in it.
I've heard it said that grief never goes away, it evolves. How has it evolved in your experience?
I think I've come to honor it more than to fear it. And when it comes, it's like, okay, old friend, here you go. You know, what are we going to learn through this episode of it? One of the quotes I have in the book is, it came from a WandaVision episode, and it was about what is grief but love persevering. And I just love that idea of, you know, you grieve deeply when you love deeply. And so I try to honor the love part of the relationship more than the loss.
When did you decide you wanted to be a writer?
Well, that's a really interesting. I had no idea that I was in sales and marketing with IBM before I was at home. And then after paralysis, this was 1997 when the internet was just becoming popular, and of a high school friend I hadn't seen in years happened to read about something in the newspaper that I'd been paralyzed by this strange infection. And so he wrote me this email, and the title of it was, "Is That You?" And this was before I knew whether I was going to walk or not. But I'd had a lot of other adversities before that. And so one by one, my friend's name was Scott. I said, one by one, I updated him on my life. And then I started telling about my wheelchair adventures, what it was like to be in public, and what people, you know, the people that would holler at you because they thought you couldn't hear just because you were in a wheelchair, and, you know, things like that. And he said, you know, Becky, and he would forward them to his friends. And this is before social media or blogs or any of that. So one by one, he would forward it, I would forward it, and we got a community growing. And one of my friends said, "Do you know you have readers?" I said, "I do." And so that became, somebody said, you know, why don't you see if you can get it published in the Baltimore Sun, you know, just an op-ed piece about playing, because I had written about playing soccer with my son, he was 5 at the time, guarding the garage. So I would shoot one way and he would try to kick it in. And so anyway, I had written about it, and sure enough, it was published. And that led to that column and the local weekly column that I did for 12 years. And I had written another column about my daughter with autism called Tuesdays with Madison, and my dad's column called Looking Homeward. And it just seemed to feel, when I shared what my escapades, it resonated with people. And it was a way I could kind of reinvent myself. I had no idea that would come to fruition in that way. And somebody suggested, well, why don't you do a memoir? And so that took a long time to do, but it was worth all the effort to do it. I feel like I've got it all in one place. It's so much. And, after a while, you want to get the facts straight. And so it's like, sometimes I go reference my book, right? It's hard to keep it straight after a while.
Our special guest is Becky Galli. Her website, BECKYGALLI.com. We're talking about Morning Fuel, her latest daily inspirations to stretch your mind before starting your day. She is also the author of Rethinking Possible, a memoir of resilience. How do you stay resilient in a world that continually throws us challenges?
That's a big question. I've almost got a pattern for it, whereas I think the very most important thing is to be honest about the situation, as honest as you can be, and how you feel about it, number one. Number two is what you can do about it. What are your capabilities to address the situation? And I feel like one of my metaphors I like to use a lot is who is in the boat with you, getting through these stormy seas? And who can you invite to help you, either be a resource to you or a coach to you or an inspirational person for you? To not go at it alone. I think that it's important to find a sense of community somewhere, people that can be supportive and can direct you through it. Because, as Churchill said, it's if you're going through hell, keep going. And sometimes it takes people to encourage you to keep moving. The biggest thing I try to avoid is isolation, because I think that just magnifies everything in a negative way. So it's important to not isolate and to keep moving. And those are the core things I rely on to kind of get back on track and find some positive ways. Gratitude's another one, trying to be grateful for even the tiniest things. That it's amazing the mind shift that happens when you can look for something to be grateful for.
Anytime you lose something, whether it's a spouse, a brother, your mobility, you also lose people associated with the person that you used to be or were perceived to be at one time. How do you recover from that?
It's a grief in and of its own. It really is. I think you have to treat it that way. And I think it's easier now than it ever has been to stay in touch peripherally. If they're not in the core of your life, I have a group on Facebook that's still my brother's friends. And they're on my email list, my Thoughtful Thursday that I write periodically now. And that's a way to keep in touch. It's easier than it used to be. That's for sure. But you're kind of reconfiguring yourself in a way where you have to, if there's a loss, there's an emptiness for sure. And you can choose how much you want to fill that and what you want to fill it with. And I think it can be a thoughtful process.
And even though we do lose people who may have been associated with our old selves, new people seem to come out of the woodwork. Was that your experience?
Absolutely. Moving in different directions, you meet new people. I think the older we get, the harder it is to make friends. Just the simple thing of making friends, because you have to find some kind of common denominator. And as you move through life, your children can sometimes provide that. Your work can sometimes provide that. Your community activities can provide that. But sometimes we have to work a little harder to be in relationship with people.
What did you learn about resilience and life from your special needs kids?
That requires a special community for support, because you really don't understand what it's like to parent a special needs kid unless you've had direct exposure to it. So one of the things I discovered right after my paralysis, my daughter with autism was invited to a meeting she was nonverbal at the time, invited to another parent meeting. This parent had reached out and said, come learn about this therapy that's helping our son learn how to talk. And of course, this was before Google or any of those kinds of search engines. So we went, we learned about it, and we started using that therapy with my daughter, Madison, and she was able to use words. It took a specialized therapy, and we didn't learn about it from her doctor or from her school. We learned about it from another parent. And because of that interaction and that the ultimate consequence of that with her being able to use language, we created Pathfinders for Autism, which is a nonprofit that's here in the local Baltimore area that serves over 20,000 people a year now. That was the effort of moving into community and trying to serve a community that was underserved. And we've kind of evolved through the years to still provide that kind of support for the community. But I think it's really important to learn from each other and to keep growing. And it's like, you need to take what you learned and share it. Because like my friend that shared the information about this therapy, you never know what could be helpful to someone else.
How do you find gratitude in the midst of darkness?
Well, I start out early and often. When I get up in the morning, I think about, I slept through the night, my power wheelchair charged, and it might be sunny today, So I try to do that, just start it off that way, and then just capturing the moments as they come and being grateful for it.
And Morning Fuel, daily inspirations to stretch your mind before starting your day, is, in essence, a gratitude exercise, is it not?
It is. It's a story to, I say, inspire, encourage, or make you think. And then there's some reflective questions at the end, just a couple, how about you? How does this affect you? Just to get your mind going in a different direction that might be positive. And I think we can choose what we do with our thoughts. We can dwell on them or we can let them go. And sometimes we need a little help, let them go. And so if you have a story to wake you up in a different way and move, set your thoughts in a different direction, I think it's a positive thing and something. It's a resource really too.
We're in conversation with Becky Galli, Galli, and her website is beckygalli.com. Rethinking Possible, a Memoir of Resilience, is her first significant book, and her latest that we're talking about now is a delight. Morning Fuel, daily inspirations to stretch your mind before starting your day. I found it a fascinating and rejuvenating read. How did you decide what to put in and what to leave out?
Well, that was my editor has this way of talking about looking at your material. What is the through line? What are the glasses you put on when you're editing and saying you're in or you're out? And the lens that I looked through these with it, if it didn't inspire, if it didn't encourage, or if it didn't in some way make you think, it was out. So all of the writings that I had done and the new ones that I added had to meet that criteria. So that's how I selected them. And then in terms of the order that I put them in, try to put myself in the reader's shoes. Like on this particular day, in this particular season, what might it look like outside? What might it be like in their personal life if they've gotten through a holiday or they anticipating a holiday? And try to put readings that were appropriate to whatever might be happening in the calendar year.
How has writing about grief, loss, and significant change impacted you?
It's been therapeutic. Bottom line, it's just therapeutic. It's a way to capture spinning thoughts. It's a way to let them land somewhere where I can read them and hopefully not repeat them in my mind because they're down on paper. It's a exercise that actually tracks progress. I was hospitalized for sepsis a few years ago and was in the hospital 17 days and got very impatient with myself with progress. And so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to track it. And so I would write about the day, how I was feeling and then how my body was behaving. And that way I could see the evidence of success. I didn't have to rely on memory or ruminations or even trying to remember exactly what I did yesterday. I had it down on paper, and that way I could see my progress. Well, I slept better than I did a week ago. So it's a document of sorts, but it's also just the idea of out of the head and on the page is a way to kind of manage rumination. And I think that's important in trying to move through difficult times.
What do you hope that people will take away from reading your stuff?
I hope that they feel more positive about life. I hope that they are more mindful, perhaps, in what they see and how they interpret what they see. One of my go-to phrases that I've used way too much, but it helps, is even though whatever's going on, I can still. And it really resets the negative for even though whatever it is that you don't want to happen, what can you still do within the circumstance? And I think that's an important thing and an empowering thing, that even though I'm paralyzed, I can write. Even though it's raining, I can work on a project. Even though, my kids live far away, we have regular times that we connect via FaceTime. So it kind of jumpstarts that positive piece. And hopefully they'll find, that'll be something that everybody can use, even for the smallest things, to really keep that mindset in a forward-moving, positive direction.
The two books are Rethinking Possible, a memoir of resilience, and Becky Galli's latest, Morning Fuel, daily inspirations to stretch your mind before starting your day, available wherever cool books are sold. If you want to learn more about Becky's life and adventures, it's BECKYGALLI.com. This has been great, Becky. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me. Great to spend time with you.
In Conversation with Terry Shepard is a copyrighted presentation. All rights reserved. I'm Lisa Davis. Join Terry Shepard next time in Conversation.